Hey everybody, Shark Scrapper. So you already saw me bring in all of these PCs. And I'm gonna be really busy breaking all these things down for a while, but it also gives us a great Geek Shark opportunity to talk about how to value scrap PCs. What's the average value? And is that the best metric to use? So come on. Let's dive in and do a little math. So this stack is kind of a mix. We've got these Dell 390s. We've got these. This is another Dell. What is this? This is an Optiplex 760. Here's some Optiplex 380s. And then we have these, which are Optiplex 780s. What I'm going to do, because I want to try to see if there's a way for us to get some decent averages going. So I'm going to pick 10 of the same model. And it looks like we might have 10 of the 780s right here that I can grab. But I'm going to grab 10 of the same model, and then we can weigh everything out from the breakdown and do some really interesting numbers about what we're getting back from these. Now it's going to be skewed a little bit because this is a government auction, so none of these will have hard drives in them. At least they're not supposed to have hard drives in them. So that's going to make things a little bit different, but it's still going to be a very interesting exercise. The other challenge that we're going to have is if we go all the way down here to these folks, we've got a whole bunch of power supplies here. And these guys are really heavy. This is a ton of power supplies here, and they're kind of different models. So we won't be able to do the same math here that we're going to be able to do because we've got all of these of the same type. So there we have 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 Dell 780s, no hard drives, at 161 pounds, so it's roughly 16 pounds per PC. And we made a note over here. Now the next thing is to go ahead and start breaking it. Now why did I use 10? Well, because 10 is easy, right? It's an easy number to do your division, and it's a convenient stack. So now what we'll do is we'll break this all down, and I'm going to go ahead and keep track of the time also, because, you know, Geek Shark, he likes to always look at how much time was spent on something. But our real exercise here is to understand if you paid a certain amount per pound for these PCs, where is the break-even point, and how can you set up some sort of little cheat sheet or something like that to help yourself out? All right, the operating table is set up for this exercise. By that, I mean I have emptied out the green motherboard bin. I have containers ready to catch the the PCI slot cards or the Goldfinger cards, the aluminum heat sinks, any mid-grades that show up. Wire will go in there, and little metal will go in there, and I have an empty RAM container. This mimics my normal layout because we're going to be looking at time, so I want to make sure that I'm set up like I would normally be doing. And I think the approach I'm going to take for timing is to, I need to get an empty motor bucket. I'm going to time each computer individually, because I should get faster the more I do them, and that would not be revealed if I just did a total run. So I'm going to track how long it takes me to do each PC. I've got the computer staged right there, ready for this exercise, so come on, let's dive in. And we are off to the races. Now don't worry, I'm not going to make you watch me go through each one in real time, because that would just be torture now, wouldn't it? But I wanted to give you an idea of what we're dealing with here as we go through this. All right, so in this one, they just have the CD-ROM down, because the CD-ROM would have been here over top of the hard drive. So do that. Wire goes there. Mid-grade, shred. Ooh, this would be nice if they all have 4 RAM sticks. That's gonna be real nice. I've done these PCs before, but I just haven't done 10 back to back. Trash. I'm not going to weigh the trash. E 7500 Core 2 Del Duo. This is just going to be a scrap. That's just going to be scrap. I'm going to need a bin for those. Forgot about those now, didn't I? That's the part I was a little bit afraid of. This particular model, this fan unit, can be a little bit fiddly to get out of there. Not to mention a little bit dusty to get out of there. Whew. All right, and then this goes into the green bin the way it is. And I need to get a little container for the CD-ROM boards and for the brass, because I do want to weigh that all up. I want to know the true value of everything I'm getting from this. So, all right, and then we'll cut the wire off of you. And you go over there. More trash. Motor, wire, more trash. Two pins. Tells you how to close it up nice and sound. And we're done on that one. That was 5 minutes and 3 seconds. All right, so we were pretty good with that one. I've got a couple more things a couple more empty bins that I had to put in place that you know, more closely matches my setup, but Nothing that's going to materially affect this exercise, so let's do it again. This is where we're going to have some issues. Because these are a little bit older, we may have some screw issues from time to time. Now that's not unusual, so that's just the reality of doing this kind of stuff. You can see on this one that the CD-ROM was set up in its proper position here. They put that back where it would have originally been. But there's no RAM in this one, so you know this is what happens when you do this. Sometimes that's why you want to get more than one of something. And if I'd really wanted to do this to the letter of scientific principle, I would have calculated what a representative sample would be. I'm just going with 10 because it's a reasonable number. Come on, you. Little gold, we'll keep that. CD-ROM board, we keep that. Close it up, take it over to the stack. And that one was 4 minutes 45 seconds. think you get the idea. We repeated it 10 times. And there's little nuances that help me get a little bit faster. In fact, here's what the time chart looked like. You can see from the time chart that I did get faster at scrapping these PCs the more I did them. This is called learning. So you can see here I reduced my time from just over 5 minutes to 4.15 minutes. Learning is an important business concern. Through learning, businesses can do things faster or more efficiently, and it's always something the businesses are keeping track of. So from those 10 computers, we have 105 minus 2 for the bucket, 103 pounds of shred. And bear in mind, depending upon which yard I take it to, if I'm in the truck and I go over the truck scale, that's a 20-pound increment scale. So, you know, I'll get 100 pounds for it. If I take it to another yard where they're going to weigh it on a scale like mine, those are 1-pound increments. So there's a little bit of variability in what I'm going to get paid, just depending upon what scale I take it to. Green, small metal socket, 13 pounds. That is the way my buyer here locally buys them from me, with the heat sinks still on. But again, you need to know how your buyer wants them. So some places want you to remove that heat sink. Some people are okay with it. Some people want the metal bracket for the CPU socket removed. So you need to know your buyer. But for me, this is the way they'll buy it from me. And this would be the kind of scale that it would get weighed on. So 13 pounds, I'm good with recording that. All right, aluminum heat sinks, 8 pounds. My yard buys those as extruded aluminum. Your yard may have a special category for aluminum heat sinks, 8 pounds. And here's our 10 power supply units with no wire at 26 pounds. We have the new scale that we're putting to work here. This is a new Mettler Toledo. So 0.63 for the mid-grade boards. All right, our fans are coming in at 2.38. I already teared out the little plastic bin there, 2.38. CD-ROM boards, 0.46. Pinless CPU, 0.55. Now this could have drastically changed the value of our scrap if these were I-series and tested functionally. But in this case, they're just scrap pinless CPUs. Number 2, insulated copper wire, 2.97. Now keep in mind, this is the way I get to sell it, with the connector ends on, the flat ribbon wire mixed in with the other wire. Your yard may want you to split those out. But for me, 2.97 pounds insulated copper wire, number 2. RAM, Goldfinger, 0.57. What few brass spindles we picked up was 0.3 pounds. Now, before we take a look at the actual values that we picked up here, one of the things that I want to touch on is you might think to yourself, well, if I just take everything that I know I'm going to get paid per pound and average all of that together, wouldn't that be one way to understand what I'm going to get for these computers? So for instance, green metal socket motherboards, $1.60 a pound, RAM is $22 a pound. Right now I'm getting 5.75 cents a pound for shred, heat sinks at 0.63 a pound, etc. Right? If you average all of this together, you would get $3.50 per pound. Now, if you recall that the total weight of these PCs, before I took everything out of them, was 161 pounds for 10 of them. So each one weighed about 16 pounds. And if you were to take this average of all of the things you would get paid per pound times 16.1 pounds, you would get $56.58. Those of you that have been scrapping PCs know that $56 for a scrap PC is a ridiculous number. But why did this come up? Because the method that we just looked at does not take into account the differences between how much something weighs versus what the value of it is going to be. What we really need to look at is the weighted average. Now you can see we take the weights of each material that we recovered, and you multiply that weight times what you get paid. So you can see for the motherboards, we're getting $21.45. For the RAM, we're going to get $12.54. And this will all add up to $57 and a penny. But remember, that's $57 for 10 PCs. So this comes out to about $5.70 per computer, which is a much more reasonable number for scrap PCs. These columns over here, I showed how much of the weight or the percentage of the weight was made up by a particular material. And what's interesting here is if we add these all up, it comes to 97.88. The trash that we threw away, the plastic trash, made up the difference there. So, and if we look at each one of these dollar figures, we can also see which component gave us the most value out of the entire PC. So you can see that the green motherboards gave us 37.62%. Over a third of the value in these scrap PCs was the motherboard. The RAM, even though the RAM was only 0.35% of the weight of the board, it accounted for 22% of the value in the board. The shred was almost 64% of the weight, but only accounted for about 10% of the value. You know what? This actually is much clearer if we look at some pie charts, so we can see, relative to the whole, how these things added up. When we look at what percentage of the weight is made up by the various components, we see that shred is almost 2/3 the weight of the PC. That's the shell, that's the caddies, it's all the screws. So that makes a lot of sense. Next up, we can see the power supplies make up about 17% of the weight. Again, those are chunky, heavy things. Then there's the motherboards making up about 8%. Aluminum heat sinks making up 5%. And then we have, in those smaller numbers, the fans and the ICs and the insulated copper wire and the mid-grade boards and such. But if we tell Excel to resort the values based on the weighted average of the dollar value from each component, we get a very different picture. Here you can see that it's the motherboards that contribute the most value at 38%. Remember, that was $21.45. Our next best value was from the RAM. That contributed 22% of the overall value at $12.54. And remember, RAM was only 0.57 pounds, but RAM pays $22 a pound right now. Shred was in third place, contributing a little over 10% of the value at $5.92. Not too far behind Shred was aluminum heat sinks, contributing 8.84, almost 9%, at $5.04. The pinless CPUs and the power supplies with no wire, they contributed 5-ish% each. So there was, $3 and some change from them. The insulated copper wire, 4%. The CD-ROM boards, almost 4%, 3.71%. The fans, which I'll sell as electric motors, made up about 1.5%. And those mid-grade circuit boards and a little bit of brass just barely even showed up as, 0.4% and 0.1%. We learned some really interesting stuff here. Geek Shark got to have a lot of fun, but what we learned was really interesting. So for instance, we can very easily calculate now what the average scrap value per PC pound, or per pound of PC, we can calculate what that should be, because we know that we had, and you'll see the formula populate up here. So it's going to be this $57.01. That's what we made scrapping the 10 PCs. And so that's going to be divided by 161 pounds of PCs. So that means that these particular PCs were averaging around 35 cents a pound. That's really important information, because sometimes when you're going to buy large volumes of PCs, they're not selling them by the PC, they're selling them by weight. So, one way you could do it is to say $5 per PC, but when you have a whole bunch of them on the pallet, it's easier to weigh the pallet. So if you keep in mind that you could potentially earn 35 cents a pound from those PCs, then you're going to want to pay, something less than that. And Board Sort right now is offering 25 cents a pound, because, they have to layer in their labor costs, what they're going to get paid for them, those kind of things. So you don't ever want to pay more than 35 cents a pound. Now, this is without the hard drive. And I think what we can do on another video, a follow-up video to this one, I will look at if there were hard drives in these things, what would that do to these numbers? But I don't want to overwhelm you right now, so we're just going to go with this number. The other interesting thing that we learned from this exercise is, see here, if we take this and we sort it, we'll do a custom sort, and we're going to sort on the weighted average of the weight. We see that the thing that contributes the most weight is the shred. But the thing that contributes, and we go back here and we're going to resort now on the weighted average, and we see that the thing that contributes the most money is the motherboards, even though they only make up 8% of the weight. So that's why the weighted average of your scrap is much more important, because that's going to give you the truly realistic value of the scrap that you have. We also learned that RAM is a very important contributor to the value of scrap PCs. Even though they weighed just barely over half a pound, and that's in all 10 of the PCs together, they are making $22 a pound. So they contributed to 22% of the value of these scrap PCs. Don't discount the value of the shred. That came in third place at 10%. Shred is always a problem. It takes up a lot of space. You've got the empty shells. And this number, if it had been a little bit higher, like back when we were getting 10 cents a pound, 14 cents a pound, that would change the contribution here a little bit. Probably still be in third place though, just because that's such a small value. But every item that is in the PC is contributing to a certain extent. But when you get your PCs, you may not necessarily know what's in them, but at least now you can be a little bit smarter and make some decisions on what you're going to pay. And if you can look in the PC and see if people have harvested anything that's important, in particular the RAM, then you can adjust your pricing accordingly. I tell you what, I had a lot of fun doing this, and let me know if you want me to try to break out any of the other computers that were in this stack. I might be able to put together a set of 10 of one or two other types, And we can see how consistent these numbers hold up across different types of the Dell computers. All right, folks, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, and there's links popping up here to take you to more shark scrapping content. I'm going to get busy breaking down PCs because I still have a lot of PCs to do.